I'm sure there will be many more conferences in Karachi, Lahore and in Islamabad, and I'm sure there are many future potential PAIB members, committee members in here in the audience. So please do contact us with not just the feedback of the conference, but how you would like to participate and support this initiative within the ICAP as well. So let's move on now to the next part of the program, which is a very important, I would tend to think, session with the Managing Director of the Pakistan Stock Exchange, Mr. Richard Morin. Firstly, of course, we haven't seen too many foreign CEOs in Pakistan in a while, and I think Richard's coming to Pakistan in itself speaks about the depth of the market and, of course, what's changing in Pakistan. Mr. Morin, an experienced financial market executive, has 30 years of experience spreading across various emerging markets, and in Canada, Pakistan was in the frontier and now in emerging. Throughout his professional career, Mr. Morin has contributed in various segments of financial markets, including but not limited to formulation of securities market regulation, much needed here, supervision mechanisms, derivative markets, central depositories, clearing system, government securities markets, and investment advisory as well. I think I would not stand between you and Mr. Richard any further. There are some fantastic things that we heard from him in Karachi, which were very encouraging for market participants. And Richard, I can assure you there are some big investors in Lahore as well. They'd like to hear from you. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Richard Morin, Managing Director, Pakistan Stock Exchange.
Thank you. I like to time myself to make sure I don't speak for too long. I'd like to thank ICAP for giving me the opportunity to come here today and talk to you about the Pakistan Stock Exchange and the changes that we're bringing to Pakistan's capital market. Khalil mentioned the importance of changing mindsets. A change of mindset is something that has started to happen at the Pakistan Stock Exchange a few years back. PSX has gone through, and not only PSX, but Pakistan's capital market has gone through profound transformation over the past few years. The governance of the exchange, ownership, regulation, bringing Chinese strategic investors to PSX, those were profound changes. And the fact that PSX has hired a foreign CEO also illustrates a profound change of mindset at PSX. I cannot overestimate the importance of capital markets for a country's economy, and Pakistan is no exception. I've occasionally heard the comment that the stock market is like a side activity, that it's like any other industry, and that it doesn't concern most Pakistanis. Nothing could be further from the truth. The stock market plays an essential role in promoting savings and investments in an economy. We participate in economic growth, we promote job creation, and we improve the standard of living of everybody. Now, PSX is entrusted with a very important mission of operating and developing Pakistan's capital market. I'll be honest with you, and I think that most of you as finance professionals are already aware of this. Pakistan's capital market is really underdeveloped. It's a bit paradoxical because PSX has a long, 70-year history and a storied history as a stock market and as a stock exchange. Karachi Stock Exchange before Pakistan Stock Exchange, but in many ways we're like a 70-year-old startup. Now, our business is small, has tremendous growth opportunity and can help transform many areas of Pakistan's economy. But we are underdeveloped. This capital market is underdeveloped. We've got roughly 250,000 registered investors in Pakistan and an even smaller number of active investors. And to give you a benchmark to compare with your regional peers, Bangladesh, with a slightly lower population than Pakistan, has 2.5 million retail investors. Vietnam, with 90 million people in population, has 6 million registered investors. And that's not to mention India, far bigger than Pakistan in terms of population, but yet 25 million investors over there. So, if I was to summarize very succinctly what's our objective, what's the challenge in Pakistan, and what will be the measure of our success, it's quite simple. We want to multiply the retail investor base in this country by 10. I think 2.5 million retail investors in Pakistan's capital market will be a reasonable number. And I think it's achievable. We have the resources, we have the know-how, we have the strategic partners, we have a very supportive and open-minded and reform-minded regulator in Islamabad. I'm happy to say that PSX enjoys an extremely good relationship with SECP, and over the past few months, and perhaps that may sound pretentious, but since my arrival in Pakistan, I think we have built a common vision with the regulator of what needs to be done in Pakistan in order to unlock the development potential of our stock market. So there's a willingness for reform with the regulator. There's a willingness to reform in the private sector. I talk to brokers, I meet with listed companies. Everybody is aware that there are gaps between practices in Pakistan and best international practices, and there's a willingness to bring about these reforms in Pakistan. It's not always been the case. I know that historically the stock exchange was not the most reform-minded institution in Pakistan, but that has changed. We now have a powerful, independent, reform-minded board of directors at PSX, and we've started to put in motion some of the changes that need to occur in Pakistan, and I'll explain very briefly my simple vision of what needs to be done to transform this market. So, keeping in mind this objective of bringing 2.5 million investors to Pakistan stock market, what do we need to do? First of all, who are these people? Where will they come from, these 2.5 million investors? Well, they will come from the middle class Pakistan. Your middle class, 20 or 40 million strong middle class, has accumulated wealth of well over 20 trillion rupees that's available to be invested in our capital market. And as we bring a significant part of those savings to PSX, we'll transform the capital market, will considerably increase the price-earning ratio of companies listed on the exchange, and that would attract new companies to list to Pakistan. And in the process, those investors will enjoy the type of return that PSX has offered over the past 10 years. Because if you're not aware of it, an investment 10 years ago, a 1 million rupee investment in KSE 100 10 years ago has been transformed into 8 million rupees 10 years later. Pakistan Stock Exchange has offered an annual return of 20% a year. So we've got a very good story to tell to investors. Yet, we only have 250,000 investors. And I think I have a few ideas as to why we haven't been able to attract so far some of these middle-class Pakistanis. Of course, there's investor education, there's investor awareness. We also have challenges on the tax front. The fact that 70% of Pakistan's economy is informal is a challenge when it comes to developing our capital market. But I think that although these are issues, they're not the main barrier to development to our market. In my view, the number one priority, in fact, we need to do three things to achieve our objective of bringing millions of Pakistanis to invest in the stock market. Those three priorities are number one, and that's a sine qua non condition for the development of our market, is investor protection. I think Pakistan has, to put it politely, an unenviable track record of protecting its investors in the stock market. Too many times in the past, investors have suffered from broker default. Now, that is the number one priority of market participants. PSX and the CCP are addressing this issue, and we're addressing it very aggressively. Two fundamental things we're doing to improve investor protection. First, obviously, we need to reduce the incidence of broker default in Pakistan, reduce the number of times that a broker goes bankrupt in Pakistan. To achieve that objective, we need to improve the regulatory framework of the industry. And in that regard, we are going to bring to Pakistan best international practices. We're currently working with SECP to set up a new regulatory organization, a new independent, competent, powerful regulatory organization in Pakistan that will have one mission, and that mission will be to regulate brokers. Not necessarily to bring more regulation upon brokers and to increase their burden. We mean to have more effective regulation of brokers in Pakistan. Today we have 4 organizations regulating brokers, and there are problems of coordination, there's duplication of effort, and very often, and unfortunately, we're not being very effective in regulating our brokers industry. So that will be a fundamental change. We're bringing in Pakistan the same regulatory framework that's currently in place in the US and in Canada. So we're changing the framework. It may sound a bit technical, but the end result will be a considerable decrease in the risk of broker default in Pakistan. Second thing we do to improve investor protection is, since it will not be possible to eliminate all broker defaults in Pakistan, when they do occur, we need to better protect investors. And we have the resources and the know-how to do that. We have the Pakistan Investor Protection Fund has sufficient resources, 3 billion rupees, and that in our context is sufficient. So we've got the financial resources to offer compensation to investors who have lost money to broker default. We've just not been using those resources properly. So we will, and again, that's being perhaps a bit technical, but we'll eliminate the current limit per broker that the Investor Protection Fund can disburse to aggrieved investors that have suffered in the case of a broker default. We'll replace that limit per broker with a limit per investor. And then there the objective will be simple. We want to offer a guarantee to the small retail investor, to middle-class Pakistanis investing in the stock market. We want to guarantee to them that their capital, their money is as safe with a PSX registered broker as it is with a savings bond. Okay? And we will offer that by guaranteeing the capital of investors up to a stated limit. And we think that limit should be somewhere between 1 and 2 million rupees per investor. So number one priority, we improve investor protection. Number two, again, in the context of of bringing middle-class Pakistanis to invest in the stock market, we need to offer them a simple investment vehicle that will give them exposure to the market. And that vehicle, well, first of all, a vehicle like that already exists. It's called a mutual fund. And that's an excellent way for new investors to get involved in the market, a safe, diversified, balanced way of getting involved in the market. But we'll introduce a second type of product, which is called an exchange-traded fund. Within the next year or so, or certainly within 2018, we intend to offer retail investors an exchange-traded fund. What is it? Well, it's a product that's traded on the exchange that you can buy the same way you buy a single stock, but that will give you exposure to all companies listed in the KSE 30. So you will receive dividend, you will receive capital gains, you will receive all the forms of revenue coming from the KSE 30. But you'll do so by buying a single stock listed on Pakistan Stock Exchange. Exchange-traded funds are by far the fastest growing investment product in all capital markets around the world, developed as well as developing, because they are perfectly suited for the retail investor, the unsophisticated investor who wants to invest their saving on the stock exchange. So, better investor protection, simple investment vehicles that we will offer Pakistanis, and finally, third thing is streamlined access to the market. We want Pakistan investors to be able to go through the account opening process using their cell phone in 10 to 15 minutes. Today, it is a problem. Opening an account with a stockbroker is long, cumbersome. You need to sign in 32 different places, and apparently it's not a joke. It's 32 signatures that are required to open an account. And you need to deal with your broker, with CDC, with a number of different institutions. We'll streamline that, simplify that, and allow you to open an account with a stockbroker, again, in a few minutes using your iPhone. So once we've done all that, investor protection, better products, streamlined access, then we go on a marketing and awareness campaign. We need to get the word out. We need to go to retail investors and explain to them, bring the PSX story to them, explain to them that no other asset class will provide them with a better investment return than investing on the stock market. Even real estate hasn't provided over the past 10 years the type of investment return that PSX has offered to investors. So that, in a nutshell, is what we'll be doing in 2018. Of course, there's a number of enablers behind that. PSX will be implementing a brand new exchange platform, trading, clearing, and perhaps central depository platform. So we'll have a brand new platform. Over the next year, we'll be implementing that platform. So we're going through an RFI and then an RFP in order to select a world-class vendor that will implement their platform on PSX. Another major enabler, of course, is a reorganization of PSX as a company. We're in the process of hiring a chief operating officer to relieve me from day-to-day operations and allow me to work to concentrate on strategic issues and market development issues. We're also recruiting a head of business development that will have the mandate to increase the number of investors and increase the number of listed companies. So we'll be devoted dedicated resources to business development at PSX. And there's a number of other areas within the company where we need to hire in order to improve our capacity to operate and develop this market in Pakistan. So look for job openings. Those of you who are interested in a career in financial markets and capital market development, look for opportunities. There will be many of them at PSX over the next few months. So on that, thank you. This concludes my explanation of what PSX will be doing in order to develop the market. I don't know if there are any questions in the audience, and please feel free to ask pointed and candid questions. I made this presentation in Karachi 2 days ago, and I got a number of very relevant and pointed questions from the Karachi audience. I hope to get the same type of questions from you.
I'm sure people in Lahore have a number of questions to ask, not just about the exchange-traded fund product, but of course anything else as well. So please, any questions? People in the back, in the front? Okay, we have a question. Ashraf, please.
Thank you very much, sir. You've given us a lot of food for thought. I'm here, sir.
Yes, sorry, I thought it was somebody else talking.
Thank you for about stock exchange performance. I would like to ask that how you can provide a capital gain, every charges that transaction charge, then investor cannot have an idea that how much capital gain charges are charged to him, whether these are correct or not. No working is provided from National Clearing Company.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you repeat that question? I know it's about capital gains tax, and I do have an opinion,
capital gain
about
charged to an investor for transactions performed in the market, no particular working is provided to the investor by National Clearing Company. I have personal experience about it. Then how can you, I can rely that whether the capital gain charged to me is correct or not?
Yeah, I understand. Now I understand the nature of the question. Your question is about the information provided by NCCP on capital gains charges. To be honest with you, I don't have the technical answer to your question, but if NCCP is to calculate and charge capital gain tax, it would be logical to me that you have the detailed information. What's the calculation behind those taxes? I'll inquire. I'll be honest with you. I don't have an answer for you on this question. But more generally about capital gains tax, the message we've been delivering to the government of Pakistan is twofold. One, investors need stability in terms of fiscal policies. We can't be tinkering every year with capital gain tax rules, you know, the 2-year rule that becomes a 4-year rule, and then this year something else and put into place. I think taxes on capital market participants should be, of course, as low as possible, but also as predictable and as logical as possible. And I think there are issues with capital gains tax imposed on market participants in Pakistan, and we'll continue the dialogue with the government on that. It's just to, I don't know if you are aware, a withholding capital gains tax on stock market transaction is not a usual practice. I've not seen, in fact, it's the first country in which I see that. I've seen countries impose capital gains tax on stock market transactions, but a withholding tax at the source by the clearinghouse or by the exchange, I've not seen elsewhere. And it is an issue. I think it is a market development issue, and we need to take a closer look at that. I would, of course, lobby for the complete elimination of capital gains tax on stock market transactions until the market has developed to a point where it can sustain such taxes. It's important not to overtax a market in its development in its development phase. And I would make the same comment for foreign investors. Foreign investors coming to Pakistan stock market are subject withholding capital gains tax, that's something that I've not seen anywhere else. I've been a foreign investor in 15 different countries. Nowhere have I seen foreign investors being subject to withholding capital gains tax in the stock market. Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, sir. For your information, I was just having a word with Dr. Sharoff, and he told me that in Germany, it is one of the taxes that you mentioned just now, the withholding tax on capital gains. Germany has that, but that is only one of the 3 withholding taxes they have. We have about 57, but they have only 3. One on the salaries, the other on dividends, and the third one on withholdings. Now, my question is particularly related to the exchange fund that you just mentioned. That is, if you want to invest, you could invest in the entire market. So could you please elaborate on that and let us know, would it be trading like something in the KSE 100 index or the KSE complete index, all companies index? Would it be something similar to that? And how would it function? Could you please elaborate a little on that? I'd be grateful, sir.
It's a good question. I'll try not to be too technical. An exchange-traded fund, structurally and legally, is the same thing as a mutual fund. So it's usually issued by a sponsor, mutual fund companies, and in fact we're working with Pakistan mutual fund companies to be the first issuers of ETFs. So it's like a mutual fund. It's a trust. It's a collective investment scheme in the legal structure of a trust. But operationally, it's different from mutual fund. A mutual fund, you buy and sell from the issuer. An ETF is something that's transacted on the stock exchange. So think mutual fund, but transacted on a continuous basis on the stock exchange. So it's got a number of advantages, and there are 2 concepts. There's the concept of an exchange-traded fund, but also of an index traded fund. So the exchange-traded fund that we plan to list on KSE, on the Pakistan Stock Exchange, is a passive index traded fund. So what it will do is actually buy the basket, and it will be based on the KSE 30. It will actually buy the basket of 30 stocks that comprise the KSE 30 index and hold that. That's fundamentally what the exchange-traded fund does. It actually buys the shares of the listed companies in the same proportion as they are represented in the KSE 30 and hold them. So in that regard, by definition, it will realize the same investment return as if you were buying the 30 stocks yourself. So you'll receive the dividends from the KSE 30 stocks. If you sell your ETF, you'll realize the same type of capital gains as if you have bought the 30 stocks. The advantages are, again, you get exposure to the entire market in one transaction. The management and operation cost of an exchange-traded fund is much lower than a mutual fund. So all-in costs should be below 1% for the exchange-traded fund. It's very transparent, and it's very liquid. You can buy it, sell it the same way that you buy and sell a stock on the exchange. So it is the retail product par excellence. And by the way, we will have fundamentally two types of exchange-traded funds, and I think that's very important for retail investors. There will be equity ETFs, but also bond ETFs. So an investor will have the ability to build a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds by buying simply 2 ETFs listed on KSE. Listed on PSX.
So what you're saying is that the ETF on equity will be based on 30 stocks, not the entire market?
In Pakistan, yes. A very important feature of an ETF is that its portfolio must be comprised of relatively liquid stocks. And the KSE 30 stocks are liquid enough to allow an ETF to operate. KSE 100 would probably present challenges on the liquidity side. So we'll start with the 30. But by the way, the correlation between KSE 30 index and KSE 100 is very high. So buying KSE with 30 index will give you pretty much the same return as the KSE 100.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And Dr. just on that note, so particularly any time frame that is in your mind for this product to actually come out, just whatever is in your mind on the ballpark.
Okay. Well, I've been saying that the objective is to list ETFs in 2018. There are no insurmountable obstacles. There are challenges that we need to overcome. Some of these things are within our power, some rules that need to be tweaked, some incentives to be provided by some market participant, coordination between the issuers, the market makers. So some of these things are within our control. Some are more within the control of government. A taxation of ETF. We need to make sure that the fiscal environment is conducive to ETFs. So there's, I didn't go into the mechanical details of how an ETF is structured, but a broker actually goes to buy the 30 stocks on Pakistan Stock Exchange and delivers them to the trust, the ETF being a trust. And there are tax implications in those transactions. And we need to visit some of the tax rules that apply to these transactions to make sure that it's not an impediment to the development of ETFs. So in terms of know-how, willing participants, all of that is in place, but we have a few challenges, fiscal and regulatory challenges to overcome before we can list ETFs. But our objective is definitely to have ETFs in Pakistan in 2018. I think there's a question there.
Hi, sorry, Richard.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I have a question on, like you mentioned, the need to increase the number of retail customers in Pakistan. And I was by chance serving on the board of a brokerage house for about 2 years back. And we used to have this debate that what is... Sorry, hello. Yeah.
Whoops.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. To ask, yeah, okay, so that's better. I would just like to ask, what is...
We have a microphone issue.
Sorry. Right, can you hear me? Okay.
Technology is always a challenge.
I know. So yeah, just a quick question that what is the best way forward in terms of increasing the retail customer? Is it the digital way? Or do you think, the old brick and mortar, the branch model, having presence across different cities in Pakistan would actually serve the purpose? Because, technology has its own benefit, but again, physical presence, having branches in different areas of Pakistan, what would be the ideal way forward?
That's a very interesting question. But before I answer that, or to help answer that, I'd like to use an analogy that I've used in Karachi 2 days ago. 30 years ago, Africa didn't have a phone network to speak of. No landlines network existed in Africa. So when the cell phone made its appearance, the one continent in the world where the cell phone penetrated the market very rapidly was Africa. They didn't have a phone, so the cell phone allowed them to leapfrog the old technology of landlines and go directly to this. No country, no continent in the world bought more cell phones 20 or 30 years ago than Africa. And I think there's a relevant analogy to be made with Pakistan. Pakistan is, again, as I said earlier, is a country where financial services and capital markets is underdeveloped. The penetration of stockbrokers, the ability of brokers to reach out to investors, we've barely touched the surface. I think this will allow our market to leapfrog the old business model and go digital. To answer your question, I think yes, brokers will always be needed. And I think brokers will be increasingly needed, not to execute a transaction on the stock exchange, because that can be done seamlessly and almost at no cost using technology. So in the future, the role of the stockbroker will not be to execute a trade on the exchange. The role of the stockbroker, and in fact, even the stockbroker will become a misnomer. I think what Pakistan needs is investment advisors that reach out to middle-class Pakistanis and explain to them how to invest in the stock market. But technology will play a big role. I would encourage you to Google, I think I said the same thing in Karachi 2 days ago, Google robo-advisors. A robo-advisor pushes the concept that I've explained earlier just one step further. Through your cell phone, you open an account with a robo-advisor, so it's a brokerage account. You can fund your account online, and you can instruct the robo-advisor to constitute a diversified portfolio of ETFs, all using this. Okay? So I'm not saying that we'll see that appear in Pakistan anytime soon, and not in 2018, but I think technology has the potential to greatly increase our penetration of the retail market in Pakistan. So I think it will, to answer your question, it will be a mix of the two. Physical presence by investment advisors and brokers, but increasingly the use of technology to reach out to middle-class Pakistanis.
Thank you, Richard, for the talk. So my question may not be a very sort of a technical accountant question. It's more regarding the general public perception Pakistanis have regarding the stock exchange. So rightly or wrongly, a lot of the general public of Pakistan thinks that the stock exchange is driven by non-market factors, that the gain or loss might be with some individuals or companies' influence. How much would you agree with that, or do you think it's exaggerated? And if you would agree with it, is this something that falls under your domain, and is this something that you're looking after as well?
I think that's part and parcel of the investor protection. When I talked about investor protection earlier, I put a lot of emphasis on the security of capital, but I think integrity of our market is equally important to investors. So to answer your question, how much, to what extent are some price movements sometimes influenced by people pushing a stock around? I don't know. But Pakistan Stock Exchange will be spending increasing resources in market surveillance. I'll come back a little bit. Number of enablers. If there are such behaviors in Pakistan stock market, there's a number of enablers to help us put a stop to that. Some of it is technology. As we acquire a new a world-class trading and clearing system, just the technology platform will eliminate a number of possibilities to do that. That trading platform that we will acquire will have a module for market surveillance. Today, our capacity at market surveillance, I must admit, is not where I think it should be. We lack technology. We may lack in manpower, so we'll invest more heavily in doing that. Some of the inappropriate behavior in our market is in fact facilitated, and then we get technical. There are rules and practices at Pakistan Stock Exchange that are not in line with best international practices. We will change some of these rules. For example, the way companies disclose material information if you're making an acquisition or if you're publishing good results. The way that companies publish information today facilitates some type of unacceptable behavior in the market. So we are changing some of these rules. So there's no one silver bullet to solve that problem. I think the perception may be a bit worse than the reality, but I think in reality there are some issues. There's no one single bullet. It's a number of things that we'll need to do. However, I will leave you with this comment. Nobody, no institution, no individual is powerful enough to be able to durably, long-term, bring the price of a stock where it doesn't belong. So simply put, for the retail Pakistan investors buying an ETF and keeping it long-term, whether sometimes some companies are under the influence, the price of their stocks is under influence, is irrelevant. Is irrelevant. The message is, put $1 million in KSE 30 today, you'll have 8 million rupees in 10 years. In between, some stocks will go up, some stocks will go down. There may be a bit of manipulation. We'll work very hard to eliminate that. But it takes nothing away from the investment opportunity for Pakistanis. Buy the KSE 30 and keep it in your portfolio for 10 years. Okay? And let us do the rest. You'll do well. You'll do far better than in savings bonds. You'll do far better than in real estate. You'll do far better than any other asset class. And we'll make sure that your capital is safe with a PSX broker. Long-winded answer to your question, but I think, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful update. Mr. Richard Moran, we just request you to remain on the stage for your souvenir. And may I please request Mr. Rana Usman Khan, Council Member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Pakistan, please come up on stage and present a memento from ICAP to Mr. Richard Moran. So much, Richard, once again, and hopefully time will come when we will move from 250,000 retail investors to 2.5 million. The time will come when we will move from 250,000 retail investors to 2.5 million investors in the stock exchange.
That will be a big achievement for Pakistan.
Indeed it will be. Indeed. Thank you so much.